Going to be a short recording today since most of what we're doing is things that are really hard for you to imagine if you're not in class. So, to get started, we would have repeated the movement for Für Elise, which we did in class last time. Then we would talk a little bit about how my expectation for you is to tune your ukulele when you arrive. So while you're sitting there waiting for class to start is really the best time rather than waiting until everyone is trying to tune together and all of the apps are picking up the sounds of everyone's instrument. So make sure to do that when you arrive in class next time. Today's learning target would be more of making connections between music and other disciplines, which I know many of you have expressed interest in doing. We would go over our rhythm patterns again. Don't forget that these are available on a separate video. They can also be found by linking from the syllabus or going from the PowerPoint slides, not this video, but someday they'll probably be able to do that, where you can have a link linked in your video and you can actually click on the link in the video and that will work. That would be amazing. But just as a quick review, number 1, ta, ta, ta-dee, ta. Number 2, ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta. Number 3, ta-dee, ta-dee, ta, ta. Number 4, ta, ta, ta. Number 5, ta, ta. 6, ta-dee, ta-dee, ta. 7, ta, 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 ta. And 8, ta-dee, 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 ta. Next up, we would look at our mi's, re's, and do's on the staff, reviewing that the middle line is where you will find mi, that Rey lives in the space between two lines, just like Rey from Star Wars: A Force Awakens lives in space, and that we can find do on the second line from the bottom. So uno, dos, that's where do goes. Uno, dos, that's where do goes. So pattern number 1 sings mi, re, do. And number 2 sings do, re, mi. Number 3, mi, re, mi. Number 4, do, re, do. Number 5, do, do, re. 6, mi, do, re. 7, re, re, mi. 8, re, mi, do. So take some time to sing through those patterns, listening to the video that is linked in the syllabus, and then singing in the empty spaces. We would review the game for Hoppled Squirrel, but this time we're actually going to play the game using some little acorns that are going to have words on them that have long vowel sounds. And your goal, if you were one of the people playing the game today, would be to run out into the world to collect acorns. And after the acorns have been collected, you'd have an opportunity to read the sight word that appears on the little acorn, and then also tell me what long vowel sound you hear inside the word. This is always tricky for kids because many of the students think that the vowel that they see is the vowel that they hear. For example, in the word view, V-I-E-W. The sound that you're hearing in that word is actually the long U sound, but the U doesn't even appear in the word view. So I have the kids, first of all, read for me the sight word and then share with me the vowel sound that they heard either the single vowel or the vowel combination make. After that, we would talk a little bit about consciously affirming parallel concepts, which we're going to be doing in this class. Basically, the idea here is that I'm going to teach you a game that I use in my music classroom, and then I'm going to show you one way that you can use that same game to work on things that you might be doing with your kids, reading, language arts, math, social studies, and science. Take a moment to read this slide and then follow along. So, I wanted to also point out that next week we have an assignment that I want you to work on outside of class. It is a companion worksheet that will help you navigate through several different websites with some great information. I need for you to complete that worksheet before our next class, but please don't submit it before our next class unless you know you will not attend that class. So go ahead and complete it by next Thursday, but don't submit it. Instead, we're going to go over all of it in class as a group. We'll go around the room and hear what everybody has for each number on the worksheet, and then we will make sure that we've come to consensus on that before you submit it. In doing so, two things will happen. You'll get 10 out of 10 points because you will have come to consensus as a group with the rest of your class on what the right answers are. And then number two, that you'll have that as a handy study guide for the midterm. Next, we would review that game we played last time called Closet Key. And in the Closet Key game, I placed a tiny little key in your hand, and then if you were the lucky one that got to tell me what the pattern of mi, re, do was that was on the little key, today you'll actually be sharing with me how to skip count from a different number. So again, this is that idea of using a music class game to teach, reinforce, or assess a concept that is either English language arts or math or social studies, science, or spelling. And so we would do that next. There would be an email quiz today. So from last time I asked for you to watch a video, and I'm going to ask you a question in that video, and I would like for you to email me your answer. So here's the question. To what modern, popular, living musician, somebody that is alive and making music that's on the radio now, to what modern, popular, living musician did the video we watched for today compare and contrast the music of Beethoven? I always give this clue that Beethoven also has really iconic hairstyle in the same way that this very famous living musician often has a iconic hairstyle. Then I would ask for you to email me your answer with Chris B at IA State in the address box, and then just putting the musician's last name on the subject line. There doesn't need to be any text in the email. The purpose of this is twofold. Number one, so I can see if you did the homework. And then number two, so that your auto-populate of email addresses will learn my email address. So if you ever need to get a hold of me in a hurry, you don't have to go looking my email address up. You can just remember that it starts with a K, and then you should be able to find it very easily that way. Also want to remind everyone that a media recording of you singing the ABC song or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star was due today. And there's still time to complete that for partial credit. Remember, those are due at 2 o'clock, but if you submit them after 2 o'clock, you can still get some points, so you should go ahead and do that. Before we do our listening lesson, which is impossible for you to make up if you're not in the classroom, it's not graded, but it's a neat experience that you're just not going to be able to make up if you're not in class. I just like to remind you that on our class on Tuesday, I shared with you a pretty little song called Over in the Meadow. And in that song, Over in the Meadow, I played my dulcimer and I sang. But I wanted to remind you some important things about incorporating children's literature into your classroom. Number one, that read aloud books do not need to match the reading level of your students, and neither do sing aloud books. So you can read anything that the children can comprehend. They don't have to be able to decode the text for you to read that out loud. And it's a great opportunity for you to introduce your students to higher level text. While you're doing reading aloud, or singing aloud like I did in class, don't forget to model the connections and predictions you're making while you read, the inferences that you're drawing while you read. This will encourage your kids to do the same when you're reading to them or singing to them, but they'll also be more likely to do it when they're reading independently, and that leads to better comprehension for kids. It's not just about being able to correctly call the words, but to understand what the words are trying to tell us. I should also mention that when reading picture books to your students, it's really in their best interest for you to connect elements from the story to information from nonfiction books to activate their prior knowledge or to make connections between what they already know and their world. For example, before I sing Over in the Meadow with my little kids, I like to read a little excerpt from this book, The Kid's Guide to Exploring Nature, that talks a little bit about a meadow. And so I just share with them what a meadow is. It's also a great idea for you in your classroom before you ever read the Kid's Guide to Exploring Nature excerpt to ask the kids, does anybody know what a meadow is? And if anybody does know what a meadow is, share what they know about a meadow. And maybe ask them what they want to learn about a meadow before you start reading the excerpt. And then when you're done with the excerpt, go back and ask them, okay, what did you learn? That strategy is called KWL: know, want to know, and learn. And then you can read them those picture books or sing them a picture book that is going to really ignite their imagination and create a magical and delicious experience with children's literature for them. But again, you've done the work of helping them make the connections by leading them to those connections through your explicit teaching practices. So that's a little bit about children's literature that I wanted to make sure to mention today. The next thing we were going to do is we were going to make a connection between great works of musical literature and works of literature and how they have many common elements. And then we would do a super fun activity with that I'm sorry you're going to miss out on. But I certainly hope that this PowerPoint presentation was useful for you. And I hope to see you in class next time.